Hey guys, it's Sam with Davenport Journal Graphics. I'm here today at home just looking through my catalog of previous photos that I've done, and I thought I'd make a video about my process when I do interior photographs. I've done a lot of stuff showing like how I do things with drones and how I edit HDR photos, like exteriors and whatnot, but today I thought I'd do things a little different and finally talk about, my process of what I do when I get home and after I've shot a listing and I've done some interior work and how I go about producing the work that I do. I'll probably make a walkthrough of my equipment and what a day in the life is like once I actually get to site and what a shoot actually looks like. But let's just go ahead and I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and show everybody what my process looks like to edit interior Flambient photos. So first, I want to talk about how I've got my stuff organized in Lightroom. I went ahead and made a new catalog in Lightroom, and I imported some photos. So these first two photos here, these are just some previous photos. This is a previous photo that I done. I'm going to be using this one for screen replacements in this tutorial. I just like this photo. It's one I took I think back sometime last year, and I was just kind of experimenting with different modes on the Phantom 4, and thought this was a pretty good picture. This is not my sky. This is one of Photoshop's stock skies, but it's still a nice photo. This is a photo that I got elsewhere. It was a tutorial on how to do Fireplace replacements, and it was free, so I thought I'd use it for myself, and so far it's been really good. And these other photos, you can see I have them stacked together. So these are three different photos of across two different listings that I've done in the past. These two are from a legacy Louisville house that I did a bunch of work for them earlier this year. And also we have this one that I did over the weekend. So we'll just go ahead and start taking a look. And the only presets that have been applied is this initial bump right here, which is based on Rich Baum's full bump. It's the same thing. I just renamed it to initial bump because that's just my nomenclature. So I went ahead and stacked everything together. And now that we've got everything organized, let's just go ahead and take a look at our first, what's going to be our first composition. So here we are. Here's our ambient shot, and it's really, really hot, like super duper bright. And, that's not going to be usable, so we'll definitely have to turn that down some. Let's see, probably right. Something like that is a lot more usable. So I'm also experimenting with my setup here. I've got my monitor, which is duplicated on this side, and I've got OBS streaming. So if I look over here, it's just a little bit easier to look over this way sometimes. But here's our ambient shot, and then we move on to our flash shots. So I take a bunch of different flash shots, and actually most of these are going to be with the window pull. I decided to go with this one because it has the big glass doors, and that's going to be great for doing the window pull shot. So once we've got these stacked, the first thing I'm going to do is right-click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, everything's loaded into Photoshop, and I went ahead and took the liberty to auto-align all the different layers. Edit, auto-align layers, and just do auto and OK. It'll take a minute or two. For me, it takes a bit because I always have a ton of photos, and I could probably have just thrown those out in Lightroom, the ones I know I didn't need, because I don't use everything all the time. I always it's easier for me to just do different flash shots and just use the remote, boom, 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 as you're going to see, because it's easier than thinking about, well, would it look better if I did this? Would it look better if I did that? I just take a ton of photos and I use the best ones because it's easier to just go through the different settings. Say, I'm going to take a bunch of photos at this setting, boom, 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 a bunch of photos at this setting, boom, 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 and just go on, and just that's faster and gets me out quicker. So this right here is the ambient shot, and I normally don't rename them because I can usually do a good job of remembering, but I'm just going to call this ambient. this right here is exactly what it looked like out of camera. So when I composed the shot, I exposed it, took the shot, and then this is what it looks like. And so this is going to be the ambient shot, and this is going to be the last thing that we work on. I don't care about the colors. I'm just going to come back to it. So this right here is the base flash shot, and the base flash shot is one that I take when I just have the flash pointed directly above my head, usually at the wall behind me, to illuminate the room. And so you can see there's the difference. There's ambient and then there's flash. So we're just going to go down the list here, and there's me going to a different part of the room and taking another flash shot to get rid of some of the shadows that were cast from the first flash shot. So I'm just going to turn that exposure down a little bit. And if you see, like right here, you can tell like there's some areas that change a little bit. So like, and specifically what I'm looking for is like, see like this area right here, when we turn that layer off, it gets a little bit brighter. And so the table in this direction looks a little bit brighter. Maybe the floor over here looks a little bit better. And so that's the reasoning behind all these different photos. So we have those two shots in the dining room, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn the brightness down on this just a little bit so we can see what's going on there. And so this is inside the living room. So, and I'm just toning down the brightness and merging them as I go along. So we can also see the difference between the ambient shot and this living room shot, so you can see that there's a little bit, right here it's a little too hot. So like here's the ambient shot, and you can see that it's dark in here, but then when I turn this ambient layer off, this area is illuminated and you can see more detail, but then this area over here is a little too bright. And so I'm just going to go down the list until, okay, there we go. We have one where this area is a little bit, it's not so hot, and so I can combine those, right? So we pretty much have what we need to start working on our flash composite. So how I like to do things is I like to start with my base flash shot and then just start combining all the flash shots until I get something that is completely saturated with the light from my flash. And so we're just going to go ahead and start doing that and just start painting in the different flash shots. So right here, I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to select lighten mode. This sort of helps with painting over areas that are already brightened by the initial flash shot. So I just want to take the dark areas and make them a little brighter. And I've mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm using a studio tablet, which is an absolute godsend for anything that involves painting. So what I'm going to do is I have light mode, and I have a black layer mask attached to that secondary flash shot, and I'm just using a normal brush at 100% opacity and just a low flow of like 8%. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start painting this in, and you can see this area over here start to get brighter. But I want to be careful about not going over here, because if I do it too much, you're going to start seeing me come in where I was holding my flash. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. And just continue to paint this in. Alright, then we'll just select those layers and hit Control E to merge. And so now we have this shot right here that has been combined to make a flash shot of the dining area. And now, there's more we can do to bring up the shadowy area right here, but we'll get to that. So first, let's go ahead and take care of the living room. So we can see we have these two shots here. and I have this other shot that I took over here to get rid of the hot spot that was over here. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Layer mask hide, there we go. And what I'm gonna do now, this is in normal mode again, because this is in the back, and this shot here is gonna be merged onto our dining room area, so I don't care about that as much. Preserving what's in the dining room, rather. So I'm just gonna paint over that, and there we go. So that sort of removes that hot spot. We got a little too much going there. Just hit X to remove that, and there we go. Merge that down. And so now I can take my dining room flash shot and then add in my living room flash shot. And you could just do a polygon select like this and just delete this, but you don't have to, because if I just go over here and select lighten, it's only going to target the dark shadowy areas. So I'll just go back and I can just broadly paint it in, and look at that. It's going to start bringing all of that light in. So watch this. So before, after, before, after. So we can just bring that down. And so there's our composition that we're going to be working with as our flash shot. So there's a little bit more we can do to sort of bring up the shadowy areas a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to select, color range, and then select shadows. And so what you can do here is you can just bring this up until, like, because the main area I wanted to target was this corner over here, right? And you can just bring that up until you just start to see something you're happy with. And so you can see, like, right here, it's going to target this area over here and this area over here, and that looks okay to me. And so all it's going to do is, you can see these marching ants here. It has the shadowy areas selected that we just targeted. So now we're going to go to adjustments, brightness and contrast, and just slowly start to bring that up until we see something that we're happy with. I'm going to move myself up there so you can see what it is I'm doing a little better. So just watch as I toggle, as I move this brightness. I'm moving it to the extreme right so you can see, like, the extreme, so you can see how it's only targeting the shadowy areas that we selected. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start back to 0, and we're just going to slowly start bringing that up until we see something that we're happy with. It doesn't need to be too much, just a little bit, because if we bring it up too much, you can see this weird kind of like artifacting that's going on with, like, the painting over here. So just bring it up. That looks pretty good to me. So you can see we brought it up just a tad. Go ahead and merge that down. And likewise, we also have a few hot spots, like this area right here is really bright, and this area right here where the sun is coming through. This was at, like, golden hour, so the sun was starting to set, and it's just blasting through these windows. So we can tone that down just a tad. So if we just make sure we have our layer selected, go over to channels, shift, alt control, click, and so you can see the marching ants come back, but now they're selecting the overexposed areas. And that's a little too much, so I'm going to click again to go, like, another step up in exposure. And so these are, like, the really, really overexposed areas. And so now I'm just going to do another brightness adjustment and start bringing it down just enough to take the edge off of those hot spots. And merge that down. And so that's a little bit more balanced, but there's still a little bit more we can do. So I usually have my white balance locked into 5500 Kelvin, which is the white balance of my flash. But you can see that we still have a little bit of color cast. Like, you go over here and there's some blue casting from the wall, and you go over here and it looks like there's some, like, kind of like an amber orange color that it looks like it's from the floor. So the light is coming in, bouncing off the floor, hitting the ceiling, and now we've got all of these different color casts going on. So here's what we can do to fix that. We're going to do Control J to copy that layer and go to Filter, Blur, Average. And so what this does is it takes the average color and just sort of blends everything together. And we want to try to introduce a curve that is going to turn this to like a grayscale. So if we go to Adjustments, Curves, and then hit this, so we're going to set a gray point and just sample that color and turn off that layer. And so now you can see it removes a lot of that casting for us. If it's too much, and sometimes it does get a little overzealous, like if you look over here, you can see the curves that it introduced. It introduced a lot of blue to get rid of some of those orange casting. So like if you look up here, it's still a little bit more blue. So what we can do is we can just turn the opacity down on this. I usually start at like 50% and just do a little bit of compare. That still looks a little better than what it was before, so I'm gonna accept that. And I spend a lot of time on the flash layer to try to get these colors right, because we're gonna be blending in our ambient layer in luminosity mode, which is going to set the colors. It's going to preserve all this detail, but it's going to match the colors of the layer beneath it. So for instance, I have normal mode, and then I put my ambient and luminosity mode. So if you see, like, here's before, and then here's after. So that's why I spend a lot of time on my flash layer and not so much my ambient layer. The ambient layer is the most important because it preserves all the detail, but the flash layer is what's going to preserve all of those colors and remove all of those casts. So I spend a lot of time on the flash layer. And so we still have a little bit going on here, and yet again, there's more that we can do to get rid of that. So here's what I'm going to do. Do another Control J to copy that, and I'm just going to do a polygonal select tool of what I believe to be a good color for this area. This one looks pretty good, so I'm just going to do this and just select this area over here. And again, go to Filter, Blur, Average. Take the eyedropper tool and just select that. We don't need that anymore. So what we can do now is we're going to create a new layer, do the paint bucket tool, and just create this layer, which is going to be our wall color. And so we're going to layer mask hide this and just do a selection of our wall. Okay, so back to color mode. And we'll just start painting in that color. And if you look over here, we can start seeing these color casts, like from the floor, disappearing. So that looks a lot better. And we can do the same thing for the ceiling as well, because we've got like this amber color, this blue color. And so we're just going to try to reduce that. So again, just do Control J, do a polygonal select tool. This area over here looks like the color we need. Filter, Blur, Average. Deselect, eyedrop, select that. Delete that layer because we don't need it anymore. And then just create a blank color layer like that. Mask it, and then select our ceiling. Right. So go ahead and select that. Alright, and back to color mode. And mostly around these edges is where the problem is, so that's where we're going to keep most of our attention. So again, just start painting in some of this color, getting rid of a lot of these color casts. I'm just keeping an eye on myself in the camera so you all can see me. And just like that. If it goes on the light, that's okay. It's mostly sort of like a silver metal color, so that looks pretty good. So you can see, like, before we've got like all these weird colors going on, but now when I just toggle that layer, they're all gone. So we'll just go ahead and merge that down. And the focus of our of our photo is the dining room. There's some stuff that's going on in the background here, but we're okay with what we got now. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to turn on our ambient layer, and then this is where the magic happens. So we've got our flash, we've got our ambient, and I'm going to do something called the 50-50 Flambient blend. And now this is what officially makes it Flambient. I've got this in luminosity mode. I'm just going to do a 50% opacity. And look at that. So we have our flash layer, and then all the detail brought back from our ambient layer. And so that is one reason I love Flambient photography so much. I'm just going to go ahead and merge that. And so at this point, this is when I like to fix things that are that need to be fixed. Like if there's smudges, like right up here, I think I have a lens spot. So I'm just going to take my spot healing tool. Yeah, let's make that the healing brush. Go over here. I'll click that and then just fix it like that. And there we go, it's gone. Let's see. Looks like there's a little bit more that we could do to fix this right over here. And it's mostly blue. So what we can do is we can do Control J, and then I'm just going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And this is going to be a very similar interface to Lightroom. Lightroom is basically the Photoshop Camera Raw filter as like a standalone application. And so we're going to go to Color Mixer, Saturation, and just completely remove this blue color. Looks like we might have a little bit of amber in there. We could also just completely desaturate it and just keep the white. Yeah, there we go. It doesn't have to be 100% desaturated, but just something like that. And so, again, just gonna mask that and do a smart selection on our trim, specifically this area over here where it's gonna be a little distracting. Like, people are gonna be like, hey, that is a weird color there. You probably should have fixed that. Your photographer should have done a better job. With that selected, again, we're just gonna go up here, go to color mode, select our layer, and then just start painting this in. Just to try to get rid of some of that color. That's a lot closer to what we want. Yeah, that looks a lot better. So before we got this blue, and now it's just kind of taken out. All right, let's just go ahead and merge that down. So now we get to do the fun job of doing our window pull for this screen. This right here is, we've got something that we can work with in Lightroom to be deliverable. So now what we're going to do, but we can take it a step further and do a window pull. So this right here is sort of a safety shot where I don't have any flash and I'm just exposed for the exterior. But then we start adding flash to overpower the trim, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a very similar thing where we just composite these shots together and then just paint in the window. So I'm going to take these flash shots that overexpose the window border, and what I do is I take my base window shot, and again, I just start painting in the flashes that I need. So, and the goal is to just completely overexpose the border here. We've got a little bit of a bright shot here. Try to get rid of hot spots when we see them, and that's another thing we can use the safety shot for. And right there, that's enough to go with. So we probably don't need all these others. I just took them for backups just in case they were needed. So we've got that right there. And what we can do here is we can take this backup shot and then just start painting in to the window shot here. So I can just do a smart select and just select this area right here and start painting this in. And it doesn't need to be too much. And I'm just going to use the mouse for this one because I just want to, it's like maybe bring a little bit of the sky and the grass back. Like a little too overzealous there. So let's bring that back. Yeah. but just start painting in where it's a little too bright, our safety shot that we got. Right over here, this other window over here, I still want to see those details coming through. Definitely want that sky coming in, the grass and the rest of the deck. It's pretty much just the outside border of this window that we want to be completely overexposed. Alright, and so now that we've got this, we've got our window pull shot, and so now, you just bring this on top, and then we're going to blend this in darken mode. And so what this is going to do is it's going to specifically target the areas that are too bright on this outside and blend those in. So we're going to select our brush, make sure we have a white brush since we have a black layer mask, and just start painting in our window pull shot. There we go. You can see, like, this is okay, but this is so much better. Merge that down. And then here's our shot. And so we're going to save that and then bring it back into Lightroom. Okay, we're back into Lightroom. And so here's our photo that we had in Photoshop that we composited together. And we are on the home stretch for this. So what we're going to do now, bring that back. Here, and we're just going to put our final touches on it. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to fix the verticals. So we're just going to go ahead and just use the guided tool. I find that sometimes just selecting vertical over here doesn't always work. Like, it does its absolute best, but sometimes it just kind of misses the verticals a little bit, and that looks pretty good. So everything's a lot straighter, so you can see, like, before it was a little crooked and then after. And I'm just going to crop this area out over here because we don't need that much. Yeah, we don't need to see the other side of the wall, just that little sliver of blue on the other side. Yeah, and so that's gone. And then we can remove any sort of lens distortions, remove chromatic aberrations, and enable profile corrections. This was a Sony camera, and it automatically detected that it was like the automatically which range of lens it was. And so you can see, like, how it just looks a little bit more flat and uniform. So and now I'm just going to crank the sharpness up, but only mask in the edges. So if you hit Alt and just drag masking until I can get the outlines selected, because I don't need everything. I just want the outer edges of things selected. So let's see. Maybe bring up our luminance, like if we look here. What could we do? Like details like this. Just bring up our luminance by a little bit, probably like maybe 20, not too much, because that overcorrection will show up. Let's see. We're gonna bring up our vibrance, and maybe our saturation by just a little bit. Add some clarity. Just a tiny bit of dehaze. Maybe bring up our shadows a little bit more. And how about just making our overall exposure a little bit brighter? Like that. And let's just see what our white balance does. So things are a little bit kind of amber looking. So if we do that, I think the other one looked a little better. So maybe bring up black some, bring up the whites. And there we go. That right there is a deliverable photo. So And so now these are going to be added to a compilation of before and after photos that you'll get to see at the end of the video. So they'll be compared to like what I was looking at in camera, and then what the final product is going to look like after all the flash and everything has been added in. And so now, let's go on to our next photo. Okay, we're back into Photoshop with our next photo, and for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and blitz through this one so the video isn't like an hour long. You've already seen my process with the last video, and now you'll be able to see why I do the certain things that I do with this one, because there's not going to be a whole lot different. The only thing different with this one is we're going to be doing a fireplace replacement, and I'll slow down when we get to that part. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in a fireplace here. So what we can do is we're just going to go back to Lightroom. Here's our fireplace. And we're just going to do edit in Photoshop. And that's going to create another layer that we will just add into our Flambient shot. And so unlock this and just do Control-C. And then I'm just going to paste it on top. And so now what we can do is I'm just going to scale this down some and put it over the fireplace, and we are going to just do a perspective skew to get it to match the dimensions of the fireplace. And in order to see better, I'm just going to put a temporary 50% opacity on top of it, and we'll just go to Edit, Transform, Skew, and then just start getting it roughly into place. So I kind of get that over there. Like there, and just try to get this to line up with the lines in the fireplace, or the dimensions of the fireplace rather. So we got this. Alright, and so let's go ahead and bring back our 100% opacity. So now we're going to do layer mask hide again, but this time we're going to do screen mode. And so what this is going to do is it's going to not blend in the black parts of our image, and it's going to keep this reflective part. I can't even explain how screen mode works entirely, but it still looks like if you have like something that's reflective, like let's say a screen, like a blank TV screen, or something like this, like glass or mirror or something like that, it'll Photoshop it on top so that it looks like it's behind that screen. And so make sure that's in screen mode. Go to our brush, and just ever so much, I'm just going to click it in, like click, and just move it around until I get something that looks like what I want. And there we go. Magic. Where's that down? I'll click. And that's something that we're going to make deliverable. So that's going to save, and we're going to go back into Lightroom. And so here's our shot out of camera, and then here's our Flambient composite. And so we don't have to go through everything that we did for this photo step by step again. We can just do Develop Setting, right-click, Develop Settings, Copy Settings, and I'm just going to copy everything except the verticals, because we may have to fix those on our own, and just do Develop Settings again, and wait a second. Not that one. Nope. Actually, make sure we have our edit selected. Develop Settings, paste. And there we go. So let's make this just a little bit brighter. It's a little hot coming in through these windows, but it was also very, very bright outside at this time. The sun was actually setting behind, as you can see from everything that's coming in. Let's just check our white balance real quick. Let's see, target neutral, how about that, maybe? That looks pretty good. Maybe bring a little bit of that warmth back, just ever so slightly. Yeah, like that maybe. Let's go ahead and fix our verticals. So we've got a vertical line here. We've got a vertical line here. And you can just use references in your photo that are straight. And so you never know how off your verticals are until you actually correct them. So like we can see like before, after, and you can see how much distortion that it removed. And so that right there, I'm going to go ahead and put a star on that. That's how I usually mark something as ready to be delivered, and put this back into the stack. And so we'll go on to our next and final photo. Okay, so we've got our final photo. Everything has been imported and aligned already, and we're going to be doing, the last one is going to be similar in that, you know, we're doing our Flambient edit. We've got a fireplace replacement and a TV screen replacement. So again, I'm just going to sort of blitz through this. So there's that. And now we're going to do our TV replacement. So we're just going to go back into Lightroom. We've got this photo over here. I'm going to go ahead and crop my copyright out of it. All right, there's that. And so now we're going to do the same thing, edit in Photoshop. And yes, I want the Lightroom adjustments. So we'll just wait for that to come in. There we go. Unlock it, copy it, and paste. So this is pretty much going to do the exact same thing as the fireplace, except it's just going to be on a television. But it's the same basic principle. We're just replacing a screen. And this is why I do not charge for screen replacements, because it's extremely simple, and Photoshop has so many, like, all of this is baked into Photoshop. Just, you know, there's no plugins that I had to download to make this possible. What I usually like to do is I like to take the drone shots of the neighborhood or the house or something like that, or maybe even one of the Twilight photos, and from the same listing, and put it onto the TV. But and that's what I like to do for a client shoot, but this is just for example, and I like this photo, so that's what's going on there. Let's go ahead and hide that. And this time we are going to use the polygonal select tool and just roughly select the inner border of the television. Just make sure that it lines up to where it has to be. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we're going to go into screen mode like before, but this time I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to make sure it's as big as the area I need to paint in, but I'm not just going to paint it at 100%. I'm just going to slowly start bringing this in, maybe in some places. Like, that looks pretty good right there. You can still see we've got a little bit of screen glare, and that's what we want. We want to keep that in there because we don't want it to just look like a photoshopped picture. We want to make sure that we have like the natural glare that's coming off the screen from this. Like, we've got these lights, we've got these windows, we've got all these different light sources coming in that are bouncing off the screen and creating a glare, and we don't want to get rid of that. We want to make it look as natural as possible. So this looks pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these together, and we're going to bring it into Lightroom to do our final adjustments. Okay, back into Lightroom. And so now what I'm going to do is just sort of speed through these. Normally I would use a preset, but I like walking through the final steps. So remove those chromatic aberrations. Let's go ahead and fix our verticals. Pretty good. We probably don't need this area over here. Let's make it a little brighter. Yeah. Sharpness. Maybe a little bit of noise reduction. Just a smidge. Smidge is a proper technical term, by the way. And let's add in our vibrant saturation, clarity and dehaze, like we normally do. That is looking really good. Clarity, a little bit of dehaze. And it's looking a little flat still, so what I'm going to do is, what if we just add a little bit of contrast? Not too much. Yeah, and then just warm it up a little bit. Make it look nice and warm and inviting. There we go. That looks pretty good. I like that. So, yeah. And I'm just going to 5-star that. This would be what I consider a deliverable photo. And that's that. So, I'm going to go ahead and export these. And I'm just going to put a slideshow on. And that's what's going to be, that's what I'm going to use to close out the video. So, you've seen some behind the scenes of how I do Flambient photography edits. And I'm going to be making a video in the near future. There's going to be the latest Legacy Louisville house that I did a vlog for. They're about done with their renovations, and they're going to be needing photography to get the house on the market. And Dave is going to be most likely helping me film my process, because I did a lot of behind the scenes work for him, and now he said he's going to do the same for me. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And if there's anything else y'all want me to talk about, please send me a message, send me a comment. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the next video.